This week at Lebanon Road, we're talking about modes of communication. That's the longest title so far this week.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay. This is Adam Fawn, and as always, I'm joined by J.D. Buckner. And J.D., communication is hard.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. Communication is one of those things that we could spend every week on this video talking about. But I was reading through my Bible recently and came across a phrase that I don't know how many times I've read. I guess every time I've read through the Bible and read these books. But near the end of the Bible, John, who wrote, of course, the Gospel according to John, also wrote those 3 letters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. And at the end of the last 2, and I think this is interesting, by the way, because they're the shorter of the 2. The 2 that are so short they don't even have chapters. It's just a few verses. But in 2nd John, verse 12, he said, "Though I have much to write to you, I would rather not use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk face to face, so that our joy may be complete." And then at the end of 3rd John, which is just barely longer, in verse 13 and 14, he said basically the same thing. "I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face." Yeah, one of the interesting things about the inspiration of the Bible is, obviously, God inspired the words of all these writers, Moses and Paul and David and here John, but he let the personality come through. You know, you've studied Greek, and Paul's writings are very different from Peter's. You know, that comes out in English a little bit, but it comes out in the original language a whole lot more.
Right.
You know, John is different from Jude, not just in what they say, but how they say it. And one of my favorite things in reading the Bible is how often not just this word is sort of Paul's word, but how you have these little personal things thrown in. John here, by inspiration, is saying, I really wanted to write this down, but this, whatever he's talking about, would be better said face to face. We've all had that happen.
Yeah.
But how easy in the world we live in with texting and email and tweeting and Facebooking and all these things, is it sometimes easier just to fire off a message that really probably should have been said face to face.
Well, I don't know how many times I've received a message on text, or maybe even my wife has received a message, and because it's not spoken, you don't know the inflection or context or tone of the way that person is writing that text. So you could take it in a totally different way than the way they intended it, or vice versa. I may write a text, and for the other person it may sound very rude or unloving or uncaring, but I didn't intend it to be that way at all. So there's a lot of difficulty. And when I think about John here, maybe, of course he didn't have texting, but in letter writing...
Of course, 2nd John is short enough, it almost could be texted.
Yeah, there you go. That's a tweet if it's in the bracket. So, maybe he didn't want his words to get misconstrued in that way.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And of course, another thing that comes to mind is, face-to-face conversation, yes, it's difficult. But as you said, even when you misspeak face-to-face, you can almost tell it in the other person. Their face changes. You see them,
right.
Their eyes light up, like, that's not what I meant to say, or those sorts of things. Whereas when you send an email, for example, you can't see that stuff. And there's also all sorts of other mistakes that can be made. I was reading a story recently about a person who used to work at Microsoft, a local branch of a Microsoft plant. And one of his sort of jobs as far as keeping the company close was he selected a movie every week that was shown to the employees that wanted to see it. And he would send an email out saying, this movie's showing at 6 o'clock or whatever. And one week he chose the movie Aliens. And the room that they would show this in was sort of within their local place, just kind of their nickname for it was the romper room, because they have popcorn and all that stuff.
Right.
And so he sent his email out for the week, Aliens in Romper Room. But the mistake he made was he sent it to the entire Microsoft corporation instead of their local building.
Oh, no.
And so all these Microsoft workers across the country are getting aliens. What is this? Aliens in a Romper Room. And they had to spend all this time cleaning up that little mistake that you don't make face to face. You see all that stuff. I also read one about a lady who worked in a company where they designed advertisements for a children's hospital. Sorry, this one's funny. I love this one. And the other lady she worked with, they said they were always sending back and forth these joke, things. And they were designing a brochure for their surgery department. And in their emails back and forth between one another that were just jokes, they titled the email, Kids Being Cut Open.
Oh, no.
And they finished the brochure and forgot to change the subject line of the email and sent it to the doctors, the surgeons, to review. The surgeons were not very pleased that they were having a brochure called Kids Being Cut Open. But we can all think of conversations, though, where it wasn't funny. You know, where we said something in email. I think of email because it's so easy just to type something out and hit send without ever really thinking about it. You know, but even in a letter, an email, a phone call, a text, it's so easy to dial that phone or send that email or send that text message and never really think about it. Never really step back and think, how is this other person going to take this? You know, how is this going to come across as a reader or as a hearer instead of, okay, I'm going to sit down face to face. And frankly, we do that far too often because it's a whole lot easier than actually sitting down face to face.
Right.
But sometimes we got to make the difficult step. And sometimes it may be a phone call saying we need to meet, you know, we need to talk. But there are some things that, as hard as it is, and yes, I've been in those conversations too where it's difficult, it has to be face to face.
Right.
And here John, even by inspiration, was saying, this is something, whatever it is. And in 2 John, he's saying, I want to talk face to face so that our joy may be complete. I think it was a good message there.
Right.
3 John, who knows? You know, I'll see you soon and we'll talk face to face. Who knows what he has in mind there? It could be wonderful. It could be something that the Christians were struggling with. I don't know. But John, by inspiration, was writing, this needs to be done face to face. And God has given all of us a mind, and He's promised us wisdom if we'll ask for it. And sometimes that wisdom is this something where, even with my brother in Christ or my sister in Christ, this needs to be face to face.
Right. I mean, there's no denying the accessibility and the ease of communication that we have today. I mean, you are well known for communicating through Twitter and Facebook and those kinds of ways. And you want to get messages out to lots of people, that's the way to do it. But we can never forget the power of face-to-face.
Yep.
Probably the most effective mode of communication is face-to-face. That's when things can really get done. And as you said, some conversations need to be had that way, in that personal arena.
Probably, there's no set rule, obviously. This has to be face-to-face, this has to be a phone call, this has to be an email or whatever. But what I try, and I'm not perfect at it, there's probably people watching this going, why isn't he listening to his own his own thoughts here? But what I try to do is, the more something touches me personally, the more personal the communication needs to be. You know, if it's something that's just like, oh, this is kind of cute, it's email or a Facebook message, that's fine. But if it's something that I've really struggled with or I've really been joyful about, at least a phone call, you know, where you can hear the voice, hear the inflection, and even better, face to face. And let's not forget, you know, letters. Those are, to me, phone calls and personal letters are almost on the same level because you can really sit and think about your words and how those are going to come across. But as Christians, we're taught many, many times to guard our words, to watch our communication. But I think part of that too is not just what we say, but how we say it. And so we need to think as Christians about how we're communicating. I just want to take a few moments here from that. As I was just reading, these verses came to mind. I thought, man, here's by inspiration, an apostle saying, this needs to be done face to face. When God could have inspired him to write 4 John, you know, and cover all of that stuff. Instead, no, that needs to be handled personally and face to face. Well, we always like to end with a couple of announcements, a couple of things that are coming up, and the big thing coming up here at Lebanon Road this weekend is a wedding. We got a wedding coming up. That's right. Shane and Rachel, Shane Williams and Rachel Pugh for a few more days. We'll be getting married here at Lebanon Road this weekend, and we're very, very excited about that. And then in a couple of weeks, there's a huge youth event coming up. Take just a minute and tell our viewers about that. We'll talk more about it next week.
Yeah, just a little shout out about our spring retreat. It's going to be at Whispering Pines in Castilian Springs, Tennessee, which is up near Hendersonville. But that's going to be March 22nd through the 24th. and looking forward to that. Our intern for the summer is going to be up there. He's going to speak once or twice during the retreat, so also looking forward to that. Hope that all of our young people are planning to attend. Spring retreats are always really good.
Yeah.
They're really good, good times for our group.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll say more about that, Lord willing, next week on these videos. Thank you for watching this week. We hope that you're enjoying these, and if you have some comments, would like to contact us, go to our website, LebanonRoadChurchOfChrist.org, and there's contact information there. You can call us or email us, whichever is more appropriate.
That's it. But no face-to-face.
Yes, if you're angry, send an email, because we'd like to try to figure out what you meant. No, in all seriousness, we'd love to hear from you. We enjoy doing these, but we want to make sure it's serving you and helping you. Until next week, this is This Week at Lebanon Road.